Welcome to Sales Bites by Journey, where we talk about everything you need to know to be a killer at sales. I'm your host, Will Jenkins. Let's get it.
Hello and welcome to Sales Bites. My name is Will Jenkins, CEO and founder of Journey. And today I'm joined by Madison Santo, growth at AVRL. Madison, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited as well. I actually had the opportunity to meet you. It's almost been 3 years, but a couple years back at a Freight Caviar happy hour in Chicago. It was like September of 23 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. That sounds about right. It's been a couple years.
Yeah, time flies. Crazy stuff. So, I'm excited to learn from you today. You got some great things that we'll talk through sales-wise. But before we get started, would you mind giving us just a 10,000-foot career overview? Doesn't have to be super in-depth, just a quick rundown of how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been selling into the logistics industry for multiple years now. I started my career in sales selling in construction software. A friend of mine went into selling a carrier and shipper broker TMS. And I got recommended to start selling that. Didn't know anything about logistics or freight or trucking. So that was wild getting into it the first time and trying to understand freight and how the market worked. But I've been in that ever since. So been in the freight industry for about 6 or 7 years now, selling on the tech side. So, awesome. And then I got intro to AVRL. I guess 2 years back through a mutual connection, Brent Orsuka. Brent had recommended that I speak with Chad. He was like, hey, this company is doing amazing things. I think you should look into them. I was having a hard time in freight because a lot of the tech was very similar across the board. So I was having a hard time deciding where do I want to go? I'd like to stay in freight, but where do I want to go from there? Yeah. So he introduced me into Chad, talked about AVRL, and been here ever since.
Beautiful. Well, that's awesome. There's a ton of opportunity in the space that you all are in with what you all are building. So excited to learn a little bit more about how you use some of your personal style to impact growth there at AVRL. So let's dive in. We're going to talk about effective cold calling. This one is near and dear to my heart. Love a good cold call. So let's just start at the beginning. If you were to summarize to like a new person, a couple of cold calling things to think about as they get started, what you got for us?
Yeah, I'll start off with, I think understanding that people are inherently lazy is truly the basis to cold calling. That is across the board. People are lazy. Take that a step further. Salespeople are lazy. We are lazy individuals naturally. To overcome that, you need consistency. You need consistency, you need repetition, and you need a very defined process for cold calling, and also taking it in chunks. So if I was to begin mentoring someone and talking to somebody and coaching someone on how to cold call, I would talk with them about how to set up your day. You want to make cold call blocks to where you do not respond to messages. You don't respond to a Teams message coming across your phone unless you're dialing a number. Should be face down on your desk, and you should be dialed in on cold calling. Within the first 10 to 15 seconds of that person being on the line, you have to bring something to the table that catches their attention dramatically. It cannot be something small, cannot be neutral. It has to be a dramatic attention grabber in order for that person to stay on the phone with you. Now, when you answer the phone, a big miss that I've seen a lot with cold calling is sounding like a salesperson. You get on there and you're like, you have this uppity voice and you sound like a salesperson. I get sales calls. I get cold calls. I know when someone's cold calling me. So a big piece to start off is you must sound casual. You need that person on the other end of the line to think that you know them. You need to sound like a friend when you're calling them, and then throw something in the first 10 to 15 seconds that immediately grabs their attention and keeps them on the phone, and at least gets them to question, who is this person and why are they calling me? I have a lot more thoughts on cold calling.
Yeah.
It's a topic that is near to me and something that I think is a lost art in sales. But I would say that those are the first couple of building blocks of cold calling and what you need to be successful in cold calling.
Listen, you got me fired up. I'm ready to go make cold calls right now. You brought the heat really, really early, which is awesome. I'm excited to peel back some layers here. So I took a couple notes, but I want to go back to the cold calling blocks, because I absolutely agree. It's one of the easiest things not to do because it's uncomfortable for most people. So if you don't block off that time, something came up, customer implementation, it's really easy to get away from it. So how do you stay disciplined with blocking your day and discipline with the consistency before we start digging into the tactics? Because these are great tactics that you have so far.
Yeah. I wrote a post, I guess a couple of weeks back, and the post said, if somebody texts you during work hours, do they have the expectation that you are going to respond to them? People that are not your coworkers should not have an expectation that you are going to respond to them inside of your working hours unless you are, again, on a break. That has been a big piece. I've been reading a couple of books on not just how to make money, but how to build wealth. And a big piece of that in building wealth is structuring your days every single day. If you are in a cold call block, there should be no distractions. And of course, unless emergencies come up, but you should not allow distractions, and you should set it on your calendar. Your coworkers should know that you are in a cold call block. Your coworkers should know, if I ping Madison, I am not going to get through to her. If it's an emergency, I have to call Madison. A lot of my friends and family know that I'm not reachable during work hours. They understand that. And if they really need to reach me, they're going to have to call me a couple of times over to get in touch with me, because they're like, she's going to wait until the end of the day. If you've ever thought about selling to a high level individual, let's say a CEO of a large corporation, one thing that a lot of sellers notice is that person doesn't respond to them until 6 p.m. That's because that person is not their priority of the day. They have blocks inside of their days which keep them on task and keep things prioritized throughout the day. And every single day, a seller should be prioritizing cold calling, even if it's for 1 hour. I mean, some days you get incredibly busy, things come up, you have other meetings to do, you have demos to do, but you should be prioritizing cold calling every single day. Building pipe should be your priority, a piece of your day every single day.
Couldn't agree more. You got me all hyped up about getting after it, because I think that consistency and blocking that time is the difference between mediocre sales professionals and excellent sales professionals. I think you have to fall in love with just the process of it and make it extremely scheduled and regimented so that you don't lose the opportunity to build strong pipeline. So I want to go into some of the tactics you mentioned. The first 10 to 15 seconds. What are some things that you think are important to highlight? Doesn't necessarily have to be specifically to what you're selling, but when you grab someone on the phone, 10 to 15 seconds, what type of stuff are you saying to get their attention?
One thing I learned, and this was multiple years back, is that money talks. Every single year, every company wants to grow year over year. So if you want to grab someone's attention, if you are selling a solution that does this, you should start with money. What type of profit can you bring their business? Throw a large statistic that maybe one of your customers has had, or a statistic across the board. But anybody that I have ever coached on cold calling, start with money. Do everything that you can to bring up money in that first 10 to 15 seconds. And then maybe money plus something greater. Like, hey, and I brought this for this company, for this $1 billion organization. That is going to grab people's attention. A lot of the times you are not going to have someone that says, no, I know that you brought that to them and they're $1 billion and I've seen their revenue and I've seen their growth, but I'm not interested in talking to you. That does not happen very often if you cold call correctly.
I like it. The combination of a revenue-driven stat plus social proof, really effective way, because your best sales professionals are actually your best customers. The people that have implemented your product and have seen really, really strong results using you, they're the best salespeople in the world. Their results speak. So if you can put those two things together early on in the call, incredible.
Yes, I would very much so agree. Very much so.
So the next thing you mentioned tactic wise was to not sound salesy. You said sound casual. How do I do that if I'm a new salesperson or a veteran and I'm trying to just keep things casual as we get this conversation going?
I would recommend that you record yourself doing fake cold calls. You should listen to yourself and know that voice inflection is the most important thing when you're trying to sound casual to somebody. Voice inflection and what you do with your voice and where you move it and where you change it can change someone's perspective of you over the phone very, very quickly. I always start with voice inflection and then the levels that you're at. When you first start, you need to be at a neutral level. Like, hey, Will, Madison with AVRL. How's it going today? Something along those lines. You want to keep it very neutral and you want that person to think, wait, who are you? What's your company with? Do I actually know you? And I think voice inflection is the key to keeping it casual. And then you must also keep it casual through the whole conversation. You never want the person on the other end to know how badly you would like them to take a meeting with you. That's a big piece too in sales, is making sure that you keep things neutral and that we're in agreement that me and you are going to meet. Not that I'm convincing you to meet with me, but that you also now want to meet with me. And now it's a mutual interest that we both want to meet with each other.
I like it. I like it. So let's go a little further into progressing that conversation to getting a meeting or some sort of forward progress that allows you to create a tangible opportunity. What are some things you think about that are helpful to either land a meeting or get something tangible out of that phone call?
Yeah. One thing that I always tell people, if somebody says, hey, okay, got it, shoot me over an email. You need to have a response on why you will not be shooting them over an email. That is a nice way to say no. I have coached people on how to give a response to shoot me over an email. Can you send me some information? That is a nice way for people to say no. There is no other way to say that except that they are politely telling you no. And most of the time I tell people hit that head on. Hey, if you are not wanting to meet with me, that's okay. Like, let's just not meet. When people tell me that usually nothing comes from that. That is an email that's going to get lost in your spam folder. That's what's going to happen. And just matching that and hitting that head on. Hey, but if you are actually interested in what we're doing, I'd be happy to schedule a 30-minute intro call to talk about that. That's a big piece, is not allowing people to do that. I would say is a really big start. A lot of handling those objections that you get on the phone, like send me an email, send some information. Oh, I'm the president of the company. No, I'm not going to meet with you, but you can meet with an account executive. The answer is no. I'm not going to meet with an account executive. I know that that's also not going to go anywhere. I called you. You are the person I'm going to meet with. If this is not a mutual agreement to meet together, then we just shouldn't meet. And sometimes that is the case. Sometimes it just comes down to, okay, then we're not meant to meet, and maybe in the future.
I think it's important to be able to qualify or disqualify opportunities relatively quickly. Understanding who does not fit or who may not be a fit today is really important. It's also, I won't say easy, but easier to do on the phone. You may be sending emails to the abyss and you make some calls and you realize, oh, shoot, I was going to the wrong person, or spending my time talking to the wrong person. But what you mentioned there is, are we going to play ball? Is there an opportunity here? And I would rather reps move opportunities to a different stage. I'm not saying I'm never going to call you back, and I'm not saying I'm not going to keep selling to you. It seems as if there may not be an opportunity right now. I need to reposition what we're talking about to move this forward. That's way more impactful than having 100 leads and an ambiguous status. You know, not half in, half out. I don't really know. But I do have a question around positioning that for reps that may not be as assertive as you may be tackling that direct, right? So are there ways to build up to understanding how to challenge someone that has an objection, like, oh, just send me, just send it over to me, right? Because sometimes it can come off brash, but you have to be really tactful with how you say it. If you're a veteran, it's not that hard. If you're new, you're like, I don't want to sound too aggressive.
Yeah, that is very difficult for new sellers or someone who's never been taught how to push an objection back onto a prospect, it can be very difficult and it does come off brash unless you know how to do it correctly. I would say listening to other people do it would be the first thing. So if you have other salespeople in your organization that you can listen to and hear them make those objections, that is very helpful because then you get the other side of it. I would say for the most part, when I push back on a prospect, I can do it in a way to where it does not come off as too brash. Now, I have come across that way before, so not saying that that doesn't happen.
I have definitely been there, and I'm like, shoot, I might want to dial it back a little bit.
Yeah. And then you just got to move on. You're like, all right, well, we're not meant to be, so move on. But I would say the biggest thing is listening to other people in your sales organization do that. And the thing that makes, which I have seen that eases people into pushing back on the prospect is when they hear that the prospect actually doesn't find it offensive. I think that's the most important thing to see is that if you do it correctly, they're actually not offended by that. They actually take that and it's basically me saying, hey, I respect my time. I will not spend my time sending you an email that is going to go to spam. And as I respect my time, you respect your time. And that's going to be another mutual thing between us is that we're both going to respect our time here and making sure that that comes across in it. But I think the biggest thing that I've seen that helps sellers overcome it is when they hear that the prospects are not angry. When they say those things, then they're like, oh, that's how you say it. And those are the responses you normally get. I can then do that because I'm not coming across as rude and pushy over the phone.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. It's really helpful, especially as people start to get comfortable with handling those objections. So I'm going to do a quick recap here. Incredible information. A couple things that you mentioned. People are inherently lazy. Salespeople are lazy. So you have to build in defined processes and consistency with your schedule if you want to be able to cold call effectively and get into the routine of that. You mentioned that you got to bring the heat in the first 10 to 15 seconds. So mention something monetary, drop some social proof, but you got to come out with something that's going to catch that other person, get them to want to pay attention. Keep it casual. Don't be overly salesy. Be a little neutral with your tone. Make sure that you're not sounding too excited because that may tip the prospect off. So you want to keep things neutral. No distractions. I love this one. When you're locked in, you're cold calling, no distractions. Just make sure that you're paying attention to actually cold calling and reaching out to those prospects. And then objection handling. Yeah, okay, shoot me an email. Don't be afraid to run into that one head on. Any others that you want to point out before we wrap up?
I would say that those are the building blocks for cold calling. And then I would say just get out there and do it. A lot of people talk about doing it for a very long time. And they're like, oh, today I'm going to talk about this and I'm going to think about cold calling. Really, at the end of the day, just give it a try. A sales leader told me very early on in my career, I just want you to try. Don't be afraid of failing. There's too many prospects to where you can ruin your pipe. Just try it. And that is absolutely the advice I would give is just get out there and start making those calls. And then you're going to learn over time also what works for you very specifically. You may need to tweak a couple of things. You may need to change a couple of things. I think there are core building blocks that you need to have for it. But I think getting out there and actually just making those calls is what's going to be most effective and grow you and stretch you in your sales career.
Beautiful. This was incredible. I really appreciate you taking some time to drop some sales bites here for us, Madison. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Will. Appreciate it.